Yeah, let me start. So I'll kind of take those in order. So first is the environmental impact side, then talking about the nutritional characteristics, and then broadly, what's the role of plant-based food in food security broadly, and how does pricing affect that? So from the environmental impact side, I noted that just because you're bypassing an animal metabolism, if you're a plant-based product, it's much easier to have a lower resource impact than it is for an animal production system, just because you don't have to go through that metabolism. So a good example of that is that for the average US cow, it takes about 13 pounds of corn, soy, different types of forages to create 1 pound of beef. They've got about a 97% loss in terms of all the calories and protein that go into the plants that the cow eats. Only about 3% make it to your plate. So for plant-based meat, we don't have to deal with that conversion efficiency loss. We just have many fewer unit operations to go through. There's no cow that's kind of, metabolizing and living its life. So for that reason, we can get to 87% less water, 89% lower greenhouse gas impact, 96% less land use. And that land use is really the super important area in terms of averting biodiversity collapse. The scale at which cattle in particular, the scale at which demand is occurring for beef is really devastating for natural landscapes across the world, and it can very much be displaced. So even if you're consuming beef somewhere that's nowhere near, let's say, the Amazon rainforest or critical biomes in Latin America, the soy that's being produced, the animals that are being produced might have been part of the food that you ate thousands of miles away. And so that's kind of a big takeaway to remember, is that these are very international systems. We're looking at international commodity chains. We have to find ways to get much more efficient, use less land, because if we don't, we're already kind of at these biophysical thresholds as a planet. We have to preserve nature for our own livelihoods. Like, this is just very important from an ecosystem services perspective. So that's kind of the macro level. At the product level, that's why it's important that we are more efficient. And at the same time, it's why it's important that we really focus, and this is not just Impossible Foods, but the entire industry. We need to be thinking about ways to address some of these impact categories, like steak, like other forms of dairy, that are really the big offenders in terms of climate impact. So it's, ground beef is a great start, but we have to also be thinking at a macro level about the regions we roll out in. Demand is really booming in Asia Pacific regions. It's been pretty stable in the United States. So what are the markets we're rolling out in internationally, and what products are we offering? And can those really be heavy hitters in terms of moving the needle on climate? So that's the environmental side. And there's a lot more to dig into there, which I'm happy to. But I want to make sure we get over to the health side, which is at Impossible Foods, and I can't speak to the whole industry, but we have a very clear policy on this, which is any product we bring to market has to be as good or better than the animal version in terms of its nutritional profile. And so what that means for us is the Impossible Burger itself has the same amount, maybe more protein than the animal version. It's got slightly lower calories. It has slightly lower fat, including saturated fat. We have about the same amount, I believe, of bioavailable iron, but at the same time, this is not a health food, right? I would not recommend that you replace broccoli with Impossible Burger, but we've made this commitment that the good stuff is going to stay there, maybe boosted. The bad stuff we can leave out. So cholesterol, we didn't feel a need to put that into the product, so we could leave it out. We do have some added sodium, but it ends up being about the same as a seasoned burger. Normally, when you kind of prepare ground beef at home, you'll add some salt and pepper. It generally winds up to be the same. So for that reason, we actually don't advise that you necessarily need to add salt, because we already have some sodium there. And so that's true of all of our products. When we look at commercializing a prototype, that prototype has to be hitting on sustainability metrics, and it has to be hitting on nutritional metrics. And so there's also a lot of information on our website about that.